Hi everyone, welcome to the second video in my series about sensory strategies for studying. Today we're going to talk about sounds and which sounds are best for keeping us focused as we attempt to learn. As you'll see, we have a little bit of a different venue with my squat rack here in the background, so just try to ignore that and focus on what we're talking about today. So let's go ahead and dive in, and let's start with looking at some of the brain science behind sounds that help us focus best. So I wanted to start off by saying that this little segment about brain science was largely inspired by this book called Stop Talking, Start Influencing. This book was written by Jared Cooney Horvath, and he is a specialist in the field of educational neuroscience. And so he, in this book, provides a lot of insights to brain science and learning. And there's some specific sections that have to do with why it's easier for us to learn when we're hearing certain sounds, and also harder for us to learn when we're hearing certain sounds. So a lot of the information that I'm going to present here, I actually got from this book. So I just wanted to give credit to that and put in a plug for it if you're looking for something interesting to read and looking at how to better learn, or teach your students to better learn. If you're an educator, this is a great one to do. We actually did this as a book study when I was teaching last year. So one concept I learned about in Dr. Horvath's book is dichotic listening. And basically, if you look at the word dichotic, that prefix di means two. So think like die, double. Dichotic listening is when we try to listen to two different things at the same time. You might notice that you'll be able to hear two different things at the same time, but you probably won't be able to understand them. So for example, fun fact, I work part-time as a barista, and we have an intercom system in which we take drive-through orders, and so we wear these fun little headsets. If somebody is in the drive-through and they're ordering in my headset, and then I'm also trying to take an order up front with somebody inside, you can imagine that's going to be a difficult task, because I'm going to either have to block out the person in the drive-through and solely listen to the person in front of me inside, or I'm going to try to listen to both of them at once and not really be able to get either of their orders. If you've ever worked in a drive-through where you had an intercom, you'll understand this feeling. And it's easier just for me at the time to move the little headphone off of my ear for the moment so that I'm not distracted by whoever is in the drive-through, and instead let one of my coworkers take the drive-through. So that would be the concept behind dichotic listening. So by now you might be thinking, what does dichotic listening have to do with me studying? After all, if I'm listening to something while I'm studying, I'm really only listening to one thing, not two, right? Wrong. See, you're probably forgetting one very important voice. The one inside your head. Believe it or not, people didn't always read silently. In fact, there was a time when reading out loud was the norm. It was actually kind of considered weird to just stare at text and not read it out loud. In fact, St. Augustine, who lived in the 4th and 5th centuries, actually wrote in one of his famous writings, Confessions, "When Ambrose read, his eyes ran over the columns of writing, and his heart searched out the meaning, but his voice and his tongue were at rest. I asked myself why he read in this way." It's ironic because now we consider libraries the place of ultimate quiet. But if libraries would have existed back then, well, they probably would have sounded more like this. And yet, they would still be able to understand what they were reading because they were able to block out that outer noise and just focus on what they were reading. Just focus on the voice inside their head. You might notice that on all of the slides that I show, on the few slides that I show in my videos, I also try to stay away from putting too many words on them, because guess what? If you're trying to read those words on my slides while I'm trying to talk to you and say something else, you're going to have to focus on one of those things. And it's unfair for me to think that you're going to be able to hear me talking and also hear the voice inside your head trying to read those words at the same time. Have you ever felt more confused after watching a PowerPoint presentation than you were before the presentation? That's probably because you were trying to listen to two voices at the same time. Your teacher's voice, and then the voice inside your head that was trying to read all of the text on the slides. It just doesn't work very well. As a teacher, I know that I've been guilty of the same thing, putting way too much text on a PowerPoint and then talking while the students are also trying to read the text. So if you're a teacher, don't take offense. I totally understand, and it's never too late to re-examine it and do things a little bit differently, just like I'm trying to do in these videos. So you can easily see why it's really hard for us to concentrate if we have the wrong sounds going on in the background. Because when we're trying to look at our homework or we're trying to study, we're hearing that voice inside our own head as we're looking over all of the content that we're trying to study. And if we have another voice going on outside of our head, all we're going to have is one big traffic jam in our brain. And so that makes it really difficult for us to truly be learning as much as we possibly could be. So does that mean we shouldn't listen to anything when we're trying to study? Not necessarily. I know there are plenty of people who claim that dead silence is just as distracting to them as, ultimate chaos. That's why some people prefer to go to a coffee shop and do their work, or go to an environment where they have some background noise. But it's all about choosing the correct background noise. So maybe you have your favorite YouTube channel or your favorite radio channel on Pandora or Spotify, but be careful when you're choosing these. For example, if you're choosing a new channel on Pandora or Spotify where you're going to hear all kinds of different songs that you haven't heard before, and all of those songs also have words, you're likely to get distracted because your voice in your head is going to clash with the voices that you're hearing in those songs. And especially if those are new songs, your brain's going to try to be processing both of those at the same time, unless you're able to block out those voices. The best solution for this is try to think of music that maybe you've heard over and over and over again. Music that you know so well that your brain really is able to just block it out as background noise. But be careful with this one, because if you're like me, you might also find yourself getting distracted because you just want to sing along with all of your favorite songs. Otherwise, your brain's going to be too busy trying to figure out what you're studying and what's going on in the background. The other thing is volume control. If you have it too loud, it's probably going to be more distracting. For example, my Roomba was just going while I was trying to make this video, and other than the fact that maybe it would have been distracting to you as the listener and the watcher of this video, it was also distracting to me because it was so loud that it was really hard for me to concentrate. And even though there weren't any actual words that might have disrupted my thoughts, just the sheer volume of it was too much for me to concentrate. Luckily, just as I was about to turn it off, it went and returned to its home, so my floors are still clean, just in case you were concerned. The other thing that you could do is just simply switch to instrumental music. Then there are no words to distract the voice in your head from focusing on what you're studying. It's as simple as that. You might even notice that while I do often have music playing in the background while I'm talking, I first of all chose music without words, and second of all, made sure that the volume wasn't too loud, because I recognize that while yes, having some background noise is okay, it could actually be really distracting if I were to play something too loud or something with words, because then you would be hearing the words possibly from the music instead of the words that I'm saying. However, even within instrumental music, there are things that help. For example, if you choose something that's instrumental, but it has all kinds of changes in beats and rhythms and volume, it's still likely to distract your brain. However, there are types of music that you can choose that are actually much more consistent in their beat. Your brain's not constantly trying to process all the differences in volume or tempo, and it actually works quite well for studying. One of these is lo-fi music. If you go on Spotify or even just YouTube, Pandora, you can easily find lots of songs that fit within this category. And it's actually quite relaxing and really good for your concentration because your brain is hearing something in the background, but it's a nice consistent beat. It helps you stay focused. And also the key is don't turn the volume up too loud because that will also interrupt your brain's thoughts. Here's a quick example of lo-fi music from YouTube. Notice how the music has a nice, steady beat so that it's less likely for our brain to have to stop and try to figure out what's going on with the music. And instead, we can focus on the real important stuff, like what we're studying. It's kind of like if you were trying to watch this video, but then there was all kinds of stuff going on in the background. If people were constantly walking by or people were making funny faces in the background. While my background may not be pretty, it's also not that exciting to look at. So it's more likely that you're going to stay focused on me and what I'm saying. It's the same thing with your brain trying to listen to things. If there's too much going on, it's not going to be able to focus on the things that you really need to focus on. So if you have too much going on in the background, it's really just going to be confusing and, like I said, one big traffic jam for your brain. Another strategy you can use is to put together a playlist that allows breaks in between. So, for example, if you want to make sure you spend like 30 minutes solid studying and then take a break, try to arrange your playlist around it. Make a 30-minute playlist. Then, when you know that playlist is up, you can take a break and then move on to another playlist. Now, the key here is don't spend so much time trying to organize the perfect playlist that you take too much time away from your studying. So, to recap, make sure you're not creating a traffic jam of sounds in your brain as you're trying to study. Choose music that is mostly instrumental and also that has a nice steady beat. But if you want to listen to music with words, choose music that you already know so that your brain's not trying to learn two new things at once. Also consider making a playlist that gets you to study for a set amount of time and then automatically has breaks built in. And make sure that the volume isn't too loud either. Thanks for joining me today on my sensory strategies for studying. I hope to see you next time. Bye!